everybody. I think it's time to go forward. Welcome to Creative Coffee, everyone, where I drink vast amounts of coffee and try to say something interesting. Hope you're all well. It is Saturday, sometime in November. Is that the month we're in? So, but I am here. I am in Atlanta for this next few weeks, and then I will be heading back to Colorado sometime. I really don't know. Probably around mid-month. So, and that's kind of the way that it's been all summer, just with this move out to Colorado. I've mostly been doing it a little bit at a time, and it's it's actually been a really good way to move. There was no stress. There was no sort of rush. We got to throw all of this crap into a truck, get it there, drop it in the house, and then figure out where it goes. So, but luckily I've had the privilege of not necessarily needing to move it all at once. So, but that's the way that I planned it. So, and each trip I took a little bit out and put it into its space, and now I'm on the last and final trip taking stuff out, which is mostly my books, and I still have to figure out how to get my piano out there. So the piano's gonna be a trick, and I've got a really large painting that fits in my van at an angle, and it's gonna be a little bit awkward, but other than that, anything that doesn't make it on this next trip is staying behind, and that's kind of the way that I had planned it. I've had to downsize things, and downsizing is it's healthy. It's you know I used to get criticized a long time ago by my family because I would move literally every single year. I think the first 10 years out of college, I moved around Atlanta every single year looking for a new place. I was just looking for the right fit. And, after 3 or 4 moves, you kind of sort of streamline and make yourself aerodynamic. It's like, do I really need to be carrying 1,000 books? So, I think on my last move, I downsized my library by like 90%. It's like it got to the point where, I really had to ask myself the hard questions. Am I really going to read this book again? Am I really going to need this book again? And, a lot of the books were like, I'm not even into that anymore. So, it's instead of having a very large library of so many books, I've got a small library of kick-ass books. And, it actually means more, because like I actually, every single book in my library I touch at least once a year. I'm referring to it, and it's basically like, reference books that I need to be able to do because like a lot of my artwork sort of takes its sort of roots in creation stories. So I've got a lot of, like, most of my books are basically creation stories, like whether it's religion, science, or fiction. It's that's what my library is focused on. So I've got like all of these universe and quantum mechanic books, and earth science books, and atlases, and God, I love maps. I think maps are one of my weaknesses. I just love having maps. And and then just sort of all of like the sort of myth stories, the story, like spiritual stories of like how we were created. I think one of my favorite books is, I have a book on all of the different stories that were created about the Milky Way, because we don't, like, we kind of come out of the Greek context, And but there are so many different stories about what the Milky Way is, and it's that's truly a fascinating journey. So so it's again, I just tap into it because it's just basically sort of the ideal that I follow for my life. I've like over the course of the past 10 years, I've just streamlined everything. I don't have anything in my possession or in my house that I don't use. You know, even if it's sort of emotional value. Like I have my grandmother's cuckoo clock. It's well, it also tells time, but um, it's are the items that you carry with you serving you, or are you just collecting dust? I hate dust. That's one of the biggest things that I hate in my house is dust and clutter. Um, because it's just the more stuff you have, the more stuff you have to clean, the more stuff you have to manage, and it gets tiring. It gets overburdened. You get overburdened with all of this stuff. Now, on the flip side, that makes it really hard because in a way, I make my business by creating stuff and getting people to buy that stuff. So I take even that philosophy even a little bit further in the products that I create. You know, am I just creating stuff that's going to end up in the trash, or if am I creating stuff that's just going to end up, like as dust with dust on top of it? And it's like I'm very conscious and intentional with the way that I present my artwork, the way that I present my products, the way that I present how I want to sell those products, and sort of having a level of sort of materialistic respect. Because there's two different types of materialism. There's healthy materialism, and then there's unhealthy materialism. Healthy materialism is owning your house. Unhealthy materialism is having five of those rooms in that house being filled with Lego sets, which is okay. I mean, if that's what you're into, if you're using them, but it's just like, you know, how are you going to have the time to do all of that? It's like being mindful and just being present of the materialistic side of your life. I think we talked about this a little bit last week, where you know the Dalai Lama, was asked a question because like he was had like when he was in Tibet in Lhasa, he was gifted, like I think like from Germany, he was gifted a Mercedes, like an old Mercedes Benz that they had to take apart and bring over the Himalayas, and then had to reassemble the car in Lhasa. And I think it was like the only, like for a time, it was the only vehicle or car in Lhasa. And the Dalai Lama was asked, well, isn't that a materialistic possession? The Mercedes. He's like, well, the Mercedes works really, really well. It doesn't break down. I use it. And, it's not about the possession of the material that is the issue. Where the issue is the attachment that you have to that. Because ultimately he had to leave it behind, when the Chinese came in and, had to let it go. So when you have to let go of that thing, that's when the materialism sort of pops in. Is like, yes, it's okay to have something, and have something of good quality, and it works, and it's usable, and it's dependable. And yes, you may pay well, he was gifted it, but you may pay a price for it. But the return on that investment is really, where you kind of have to measure that. But then what do you do when it breaks? What do you do when the side of your brand new $100,000 Mercedes Benz gets scratched against a bush that you just happened to drive by? And, does it ruin your day? Or do you like, oh, I need to get that fixed? Or do you like wabi sabi it and you just kind of like just leave it? Because I like, I've had a lot of coffee. I'm going really, really fast. uh, it kind of brings me into like the concept of wabi sabi and the idea that, you know, sometimes we get things with nicks or dents or things get broken, and you know the wabi sabi is the mentality of those items taking on a sort of personality or character because of those defects, where the defects become a positive rather than it being a detriment. And I've always loved that philosophy. It's like old furniture, that maybe has a stain on it, but that stain is a story. And then, so that object now has a story and it has a character and it makes it unique and it's different. And you can either focus your mind into the coolness of that. Like, I'll give you an example. I don't have it with me here, but I've got a painting that I did of Michelangelo's creation of Adam, the one with Adam and God and the fingers touching. And I was moving into a new studio, and my friend came over, wanted to hang out. He brought his dog, and I had the painting leaning up on the floor against the wall. And his dog went up to it and pissed on it. He literally pissed on God. And my friend got like so taken aback and started yelling at the dog, and I'm like, it's okay, it's an oil painting, it's fine. It will wear off, it'll rub off. But now that painting has a story of dog pissing on God. I mean, it's all in the mindset that you have. I could have been, oh my God, and enforced my friend to pay for this painting, which I wasn't going to do, but just like, or like yelled at my friend, or yelled at the dog, or like just let it ruin my evening. But then, like, because I remember when it was happening, all I did was laugh because the dog was peeing on God. And I'm like, what a strange dyslexic metaphor. And it's the power of our intentions, of our thoughts, the power of the intentions of our intentions, and how we choose to accept it. Now, I would say a lot of times, like, now I'm not like always. I mean, there's been times when like I have backed my car into something and I put a big old dent in the side of it, and like I've let it ruin my day. And well, of course this was a lot when I was younger, but like analyzing a lot of it usually comes down to whether or not if I'm tired or if I'm exhausted. Usually if you're tired or exhausted, you can't hold back it's harder to hold back the emotions when you're tired or when you're exhausted, and then it's just it comes out. um you know but then that brings into a whole nother side of it, is just you know maintaining your vessel, maintaining who you are, making sure you get the proper sleep, making sure that you eat well, making sure that you're regulating your downtime. So um yeah, interesting start to this morning. I jumped all over a bunch of different places, and it ultimately ended up with a dog peeing on God. um sorry sorry wherever you are. um but it's yeah, it's I wish I had this composure in high school, you know, or just even in college, or just even in my 20s. 30s is when it started to kind of like, okay, I'm being an ass. I should probably I should probably think before I speak and not say something stupid. But then you get really really good at it, and then you get good at the composure. But then there's always that one time where you let your guard down, and then you just say the dumbest, stupidest, rejected thing that you can possibly say, and then everybody looks at you like, where did that come from? So, anyhow, I hope you're all doing well today. Um, any questions, or just want to like just say hello and pop in? Um, I'm here. We're here for the hour. I'll probably be here again tomorrow. So, um, I guess some things of note. I've started putting up on my Facebook page, and ultimately I'll be putting it onto the website, is I'm finally curating all of the stories for all of the pieces that I have that uh that I'm promoting, So um I'm just trying to do, my goal is to do one or two of them a day and just get them up. You know, my goal is on my website is to have a stories section where you can sort of kind of meander and wander and just let go and just see where it takes you, where you can just, you know, follow the images where you want to go, and then you can be given the stories of each of them. The idea is that, and this is very Terry Pratchett Discworld, is there's no real beginning to the story, there's no real ending to the story, there's no real one or right way to read the story, because, you know, every story is a story unto itself, but then the ending of every story can lead to the beginning of any of the other stories. And rather than having a linear sort of storytelling process, it's very, very dynamic. And, it's there's like an association with the story of the Grail, or the search for the Grail. And I think Joseph Campbell is who I heard say this, is sort of like the meaning with the Grail is when they went out and searched for the Grail, they all didn't go together. They all kind of went into the forest separately, because they all had to come to the Grail in their own individual ways. And taking off of like all of the vast books of Terry Pratchett and trying to figure out where to start with that whole world, it's kind of like just what book cover draws you in, you go into the story. So you have this vast universal story, but everybody's coming to it in their own individual ways and finding their own way through it. And then the idea is then everybody talks about how they've experienced that story, and in there the overlying story then ultimately reveals itself. And it's it's like Marvel is kind of doing it, and Star Wars is getting there now, because they're kind of using the Marvel idea to kind of work forward with Star Wars. But it's like, where do you begin with the Marvel movies? Just start wherever. I I love doing that sometimes with TV series, where I don't feel like I necessarily need to start in the beginning. All right, I don't necessarily need to start at the first published book. You know, I like to start where my attention is drawn, and then hold let myself find my way through it. It's one of the things that I like that George Lucas did with the first Star Wars movie, where he started it at episode 4. And the fact that you've got this villain in that story arc, Darth Vader or Anakin Skywalker, and he's this biggest feared person next to the Emperor in the galaxy. But then going back and then showing him as a little boy who is endearing and is loving to the people around him. And it's like, how did he fall? And it's like, I think, you know, I hope future generations don't make their children watch Star Wars like starting with episode one, but they do it with um I think I forgot what it's called. There's a certain where you do you let people you let a person watches episode 4 first, and then they watch 1, 2, and 3, then they go to 5 and 6, because then I think episode 5, the big twist in Empire Strikes Back hits harder. And it's always about that twist. Uh, so, yeah. Anyhow, is anyhow a word? I find that I use the word anyhow a lot. I just like it better than anyway. Like, I know a lot of people say like, well, anyway, like, well, anyhow. So, now I don't know. It's not important in this moment, but last night I just want to kind of do a shout out. I had the privilege of painting live at Soul Dance, and Soul Dance is an ecstatic dance community here in Atlanta, and it's just one of the most amazing communities that I belong to. And the fact that we can get 500 people out for a dance event and it be 100% sober, a complete sober, substance-free event, no alcohol, no drugs, no mind-altering substances, just all just sort of pure just energy, and we all just get high off of ourselves and dance, and it's very powerful, because in a lot of ways, and I know I have struggled with this in the past, where like for me to feel like I can enjoy the night out or I can enjoy the party, I have to imbibe vast amounts of alcohol, or that like alcohol becomes the main thing or drugs become the main thing to define the evening. But to be able to be in a room of 500 people that are sober and every single person in the room is dancing, free of inhibitions, because we feel that like we need these substances to free these inhibitions so that we can enjoy the evening. And it's like, why have we developed and evolved a social interaction that requires that, or the idea that a sober event is completely boring? It's like, why do we got to throw alcohol and drugs on everything to have a good time? No, I have witnessed firsthand 500 people sober dancing and everybody dancing in the room, all night long. I mean, that's magic. I mean, that to me is magic. Just like, wow. Well, it's not magic. It's what we are. It's the human condition being allowed to be what it's supposed to be without inhibitions or criticism of, like, I can't dance unless I have a drink. Why? Why can't you dance without having a drink? Why do you need the drink to be able to open up? Anyhow, I give so much credit to the ecstatic dance community for, staying true to that message. And, it's just such a more just warming and endearing environment to be in, where I don't need to worry about some drunk person crashing into my table or my canvas where I'm painting live, you know. Something big to be said. But so we all went out and we danced at the Sycamore Chapel here in Decatur, Georgia, and it's just a beautiful venue, beautiful people. We got to see Deadova, who's just this wonderful musical voyage that they take you on. That visit was visiting from Australia, and I'm just a full fan at this point. But it's like, I want more of that. And then to top it all off, I wake up in the morning fully energized and not hungover. I don't have a suicide Tuesday. You know, I mean, it's just a better way of being. And then the other big thing is it's it's people of all ages and backgrounds, and the diversity there is just, you know mind blowing. And you know all these people just coming together for the dance. And you know I wish we can all be like that. It's like it's starting to get to the point where I don't want to go to alcohol driven events anymore. I don't want, you know I don't want to be in a, well, not necessarily. I mean, there's something to be said for that too, but you know I don't know. I just think it's such a breath of fresh air that, like, there's a big rise of events that are billed as substance-free events, and it's thought of as stuff like I have way more fun at those events than I do drinking and, like, going out for a night of drinking and debauchery in a bar. And I wish I can bottle that up and I can just show people that it's possible to have an event like that, and not have to take mind altering substances. So anyhow, not that there's anything wrong with mind altering substances. I mean, there's a time and a place for them. It's just, I feel like they're training wheels. I mean, ultimately, in a healthy space, you don't need those. You don't need it. Like, or not to the need to the extent that you just overdo it to the point of passing out and collapsing on the floor. I think that's sort of the biggest misnomer that gets thrown at, you know, young people's events, is that, like, the party's gotta be raging in that mindset, and it's not necessary. You don't need it. So anyhow, but last night, and I'm always grateful for Scott and Maya, who are the founders of Soul Dance, to let me come over and paint. And I'm honest, it's worth the drive from Colorado. Luckily, it's all downhill from Colorado, so of course I have to go back now. But you know, it's always worth the trip, always worth it. So, but I got to work on this piece last night, and I guess I wanted to kind of walk through this piece a little bit and let people understand what this is. First off, woo, this is a piece in a series called The Masterworks. And the Masterworks were a series that I created where the intention for each piece is it explores a sort of dynamic of a uh, sort of a creation story or a spiritual system that was created by some culture in our past. And this one is called Music of the Spheres. And Music of the Spheres basically has its roots in Pythagoras or Pythagorean theorem, you know, a squared plus b squared equals c squared of the triangle, right triangle stuff. But then it also, you know, has some connection to Ptolemy and Boethius, I believe his name, in the 4th century Italy. Um, and basically, it's the concept of back in the early days with the planets. The term planet ultimately means wanderer, and it's just basically the stars that wandered across the skies in ancient days. So the idea was each of the planets or each of these wanderers were in this sort of celestial sphere, and each of those spheres was a different note in the musical scale. So all of the planets kind of moved and rotated around each other in a sort of symphony, sort of like music of the spheres. Is so that's where that comes from, and so basically, you have here in the center is the sun, and stemming off of that, I've got Mercury, Venus, and then there's Mars, and then I have the symbol for the moon to represent Earth, and then all of these planets in this sort of inner area of the solar system are the Earth planets. So they're all bounded together by the symbol for the Earth, so representing the Earth symbols. So it's just my own interpretation of being able to put all of the planetary glyphs together in a way that kind of made sense. Um, Mercury is the one that's closest to touching the sun. Mercury and Venus sort of having the similar symbol, but then sort of Mercury has the arc, and then sort of Mars is pointing in outwards. And then I've got 4 symbols here that represent the 4 asteroid goddesses of Vesta, Ceres, Pallas Athena or Athena, and that's Juno. I got Juno over here, and then you go out to the 2 gas giants, which are Jupiter and Saturn, and these 2 are like, we probably would not exist if not for the relationship between these 2 planets. And the reason being is in the early part of the solar system, as it was forming, and then when we, like what we've noticed in other solar systems that are out there that we have found now, that like we're finding that ours is, for some reason, our solar system is very unique to all of the other solar systems that we're finding, because a lot of times the Jupiter planet ends up getting pulled too close into the sun, and then it breaks up the area where the Earth planets have a chance to form. So Jupiter, in the early part of our solar system, started pushing into the inner solar system and literally came up almost as close as the orbit of Mars. And what stopped it was Saturn. The gravitational pull of Saturn, and having Saturn there, Saturn was able to pull Jupiter back. And it's kind of one of the reasons why Mars ended up as small as it did, and the asteroid belt is as broken as it is. And, so Saturn pulled Jupiter back. And now Jupiter has a really, really important place, because it actually, in its location, and we saw this mostly with Comet Shoemaker-Levy when it crashed into Jupiter back in um, a couple decades ago. Um, it sort of protects the inner solar system from any of the outer rocks. It sort of, you know, kind of can like keeps us safe. And but another thing is there is also a relationship between Jupiter and the moon. And actually, because of the mass of Jupiter, it's actually, believe it or not, pulling the moon away from Earth at about 3 centimeters per year. And you know, but these two were really integral in how the inner planets formed. Like I said, so Jupiter was pushing in too close, and if it wasn't for Saturn to be able to pull it back, we would not have existed. We would not exist. And I think in some of the other solar systems, they didn't have a Saturn, so the Jupiter planet ultimately pulled in and just kept going until what we call, or what we call hot Jupiters, where they get into probably as close as the orbit of Mercury, and then, they're just, it's just there's no way life can form in those solar systems. And then we've got the ice giants of Uranus and Neptune kind of working together in the outer solar system, and then beyond Neptune we have the trans-Neptunian planets, or the Kuiper belt. So sort of Neptune is sort of protecting us out on the outer rim, and but that's what this painting represents. All right, this is sort of mapping out, not necessarily like to scale the orbit structure of the planets. It's really about resonance. It's about how the different gravitational resonance are affecting each other. So you've got the inner Earth planets all being bound by the Earth symbol, and then you've got the gas giants, and then you've got the ice giants. I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to place Pluto, because it's not just Pluto anymore. We've got Eris, we've got Quar, we've got Makemake, we've got Sedna. There's, we have a ton of dwarf planets out, what are called trans-Neptunian objects, or KBOs, Kuiper Belt objects, that are out there beyond Neptune now. And what blows my mind is that we are still learning about our solar system. And now that we are creeping out into the Kuiper Belt, and we're seeing and we're finding the dwarf planets that are out there on the edge, we are finding that there is something that's disturbing them out into the deep solar system, to the point where I think the mathematics that we have calculated is there is an object of roughly about 10 times the mass of the Earth that is out there in the Kuiper Belt. We have another planet. We can see it disturbing, because like all of the Kuiper Belt objects that we are studying, all of their orbits seem to be going and leaning in a certain direction. And there is something that is disturbing them out there that we haven't found yet. It's called Planet 9. It used to be called Planet X. A lot of people think it's another star. There's people that think it's another planet. Whatever it is, the mathematics is saying that there's an object of about 10 Earth masses out there that are disturbing it. And the interesting, like totally mind-blowing hypothesis that is out there with it is that our solar system might have a primordial black hole. Now, primordial black holes were created in the early, or hypothesized to have been created during the sort of matter transition of going from the when the stars first started forming, as we transitioned from where the cosmic microwave background comes from, transitioning from that phase into a new phase of the universe. There were these primordial black holes that are literally the size of my fist. right now. So a primordial black hole that's about the size of my fist, like about the size of a grapefruit. So imagine a black hole about this big. Guess what the mass of a primordial black hole this size is? It's roughly 10 Earth masses. So we have this object out in the solar system that is pulling these Kuiper Belt objects, and mathematically we're calculating that its mass is roughly around 10 Earth masses. So one of the hypotheses is that out deep in our solar system, we could potentially have one of these hypothesized primordial black holes that are out there. So that would be kind of mind blowing. But how do you find something this big out at about 300 AU? And AU is the distance of the sun to the Earth. How do you find something this big, 10 Earth masses, out there at about 300 AU? So it's who knows? You know, the other unique thing that we have in our solar system is that normally stars of our type, like the stars of our type, have a companion star. Our solar system does not have our star does not have a companion star, which makes it very unique and odd. It doesn't mean that most stars in the universe are binary pairs, because most stars in the universe are red dwarfs, and most red dwarfs are single entities. So, but anyhow, so this piece, which is part of the series of the Masterwork series, it's kind of like my Book of Shadows, is a good way to put it. Is I'm taking the artistic, the core sort of technique to my artistic practice. I'm putting into all of these paintings, but then also each of these items, each of these pieces kind of explore a different aspect on how the universe is created. This is actually a companion painting to Wandering Wheel, which was the first painting in the series that I painted in 2007. So Wandering Wheel is the astrological wheel that shows the different houses around the zodiac or the ecliptic. This is showing the planetary spheres, and the two of them interact with each other. The idea for these paintings is you can put them one on top of the other in the Masterwork series, and they sort of follow the same pattern. They're all sort of connected by the underlying what is called an armature. Most paintings that you see that the artists do, paintings are started with what's called an armature, and an armature is basically a grid or an idea of how they want the energy, or how they want the painting to be viewed, or like where they want you to be drawn into the paintings. So all of these paintings are kind of built off of the same armature, and through that they connect to each other geometrically. So we're pretty far out this morning, but mostly because I was working on this painting last night at Soul Dance, and again, it's always a pleasure. This painting is like, to talk a little bit about, like, I'm sure you have all seen the stickers and the magnets that I'm doing, the little hex pieces that I'm doing that all sort of are designed to work together. The basic way that the books work and how I'm curating my artwork, where each of them is a story, but then they all are in a collection of stories, like almost like each painting is a chapter, and then they're getting sort of curated into books. And the main piece that defines each of the books are one of the paintings from this series, and I'm going in order. So this is going to be the main focus of book 4, that is hopefully coming out. I got to get this painting finished. This painting is not done yet. Well, none of them are done yet. They're done when I'm dead. But this piece right here, I'm trying to get within the next month to a point where I feel like it's at least has the information that it needs to carry to be able to make the book work. But I'll probably keep working on it, like I said, till I die. Um, One thing like I'm trying to make sure that I get out there and people know is my paintings are dated from the year that I start the painting, not the year that I finish the painting. And that is because I don't stop working on them. I'm going to be working on them until I'm done here, completely. And I'm off to the next adventure. But it's just a little sort of odd quirk with my painting when you see the dates. Um, they're dated based on when the painting starts, not when the painting ends. Ultimately, all the paintings are done when I'm gone. So I got that going for me. How are you? But oh, I don't know. I think one of the problems that I don't have a script for this thing is I just sometimes get little moments like, okay, where do I go next? But the whole idea of creative coffee is I come into these streams just I just jump in and I see where it goes and I see where the audience takes it. I see where my mind goes. I see where the coffee takes me, and you know, it's a good practice. I'm coming up on a year now of doing this, and in the beginning it was a little bit tough, but I'm starting. But after a year of doing this, I am starting to have the confidence in myself that I can carry it for. There's enough stuff up in his head where I can carry it for an hour and make it entertaining, and the coffee helps. And here I am all talking about going to events where it's a substance free, and I'm doing these shows based off of coffee. I don't know. Do we put coffee in a separate category than we do alcohol and drugs? I mean, it is a drug. Alcohol is a drug. Drugs are drugs. Caffeine is a drug. I don't know. We make things so difficult for ourselves with the way that we define things. It's like as one-dimensional thinkers, and when I say one-dimensional thinker, us versus them mentality. All right, if light, dark, Pepsi, Coke, Apple, PC, it's linear, one-dimensional thinking that bounces back and forth within each other. It's probably why our language tends to be as divisive as it is, because we all feel that we need to either lean this way or we need to lean that way. And one of the good things that I'm looking forward to quantum computers is our traditional computer that we use now is binary, so it's one dimensional. It's either it's on or it's off. It's on, it's off. With quantum computing, the qubit rather than the bit, the qubit is the individual items in quantum computers, is that it's not just on and it's not just off. It's an infinite between of possibilities of being somewhat on and somewhat off. So rather than just having either on and off, you've got the capacity for more options within that, which allows you the ability to process more faster. And that's where all of that is moving. So I like how technology, I like how art, and I like how philosophy and spirituality is all opening up. Like, we are still opening up new concepts and vistas for our minds to explore, to expand our knowledge base. And you know, it's we need to kind of move away from the mentality of us versus them. I mean, not to the point where we ignore it and, you know, just dispose of it. I mean, you need to have that, but it's time for the next level of thinking. You know, the next level of thinking beyond the us versus them, beyond the one first dimension, and being able to see the field of things that need to be understood. You know, it's I think people complain that like Disney and movies are kind of, you know, it's not as easy as it was 50 years ago where you know who the bad guy was. All right? In life, it's not that easy. All right? I mean, it's not that easy. I mean, you just have to look at the Middle East right now, and or even Ukraine right now to understand it's not straightforward anymore. You know, and I think the one-dimensional thinking was just a lazy way of validating killing somebody. Um, you know, as we are growing as a single population on this planet, and as we start growing out into the cosmos, um, you know, we can't think in terms of that anymore. I mean, we have to think in terms of what we do to others, we're ultimately doing to ourselves, and you know what we do to this planet, we are doing to ourselves. You know, it comes back on us, and I think we need to get wiser and more open to those ideas, and you know, not sort of, you know, criticize. I mean, we need to always need to be critical of everything, but there's a difference between being critical and criticizing. Um, you know, critical thinking, not criticizing thinking. You know, um, but I mean that's the way it is, and I'm realizing I'm stoic. I am out of coffee, and we have 5 minutes left. So, um, I hope this. I always hope these things are beneficial. I mean, these. Oh crap! I forgot to record this. I can download it. I'll be able to download it. So, um, I'm still learning. I mean, I do this to get better at it. You know, I feel so much more confident in myself being able to get on video and talking about things and talking about my ideas and talking about my artwork than I did even a year ago. Um, you know, it's that was the whole concept of this project and the intention behind this project, you know, was to learn how to do this and get better at it. And, um, you know, it's just throw yourself in the deep end of the pool sometimes. Put floaties on if you feel like you need to. Just, you know, just show up, do it. Don't worry about falling. Don't worry about failing. Don't worry about doing it wrong. Don't worry about saying the wrong thing. You know, you can always, you know, rebut yourself. You can always correct yourself. I mean, that's what science is about. You know, science is about experimentation and figuring out what truly is. And a lot of times you can't find out what truly is unless you do what's truly not. Um, and, you know, you do what feels comfortable and you just move forward with it. And I think there's a lot of core things we don't teach the young these days. We think that we just need to sort of standardize and digitize the education system, and we don't teach, like, I think core should be about critical thinking, should be about not being like teaching people to not be afraid, to leave space for people to be able to experiment with themselves. Um, you know, we're constantly evolving. I think for I think for us to think that as a species we're done or that we've reached the pinnacle of our existence is naive and ignorant with a sort of dash of arrogance to it. I think we haven't even started beginning being human yet, and um, we're just like we're like if you go into the Kardashev scale, which is a scale that a Russian astronomer put forth on how to measure um, the level of a spacefaring society or civilization. And I think he had type one, type two, type three. Like type one civilization is a civilization that has been able to fully utilize and balance themselves with the resources of their planet. A type 2 is a civilization that has been able to do that on the level of their solar system. And a type 3 is a spacefaring civilization that has been able to do that on the level of the galaxy. Now, since his existence, it goes up to 7 now, because now it includes civilization that has reached the size of the universe, and then there's the multiverse, and there's different levels of multiverse that go beyond that. There's not one sort of definition of multiverses. There are multiple flavors of the multiverse in multiple directions. And as our mind keeps expanding outward, we keep like seeing new areas for our consciousness to grow into, or potential, that is. But where we are today, I think Carl Sagan was the one that kind of pointed out, it's like we're roughly around a 0.7 civilization. We haven't even reached one level one. We have not even reached a level 1 civilization yet. And I mean, we're still killing each other. So, a level, to me, a type 1 civilization has gotten past the petty sort of bickering, killing, destroying, I'm better than thou, my God is better than your God type of mentality, and I have to kill you for it. This is my land, go fuck yourself type of mentality. Um, a type 1 civilization is a civilization that is onto itself and won't consume itself and has gotten in balance with itself and the resources and the planet that it lives on, and it's not raping everything. So we're a 0.7, folks. We got a long way to go. I think we're gonna just, by the end of my life, I think we'll ultimately, if we're lucky, get to like a 0.85 civ, moving forward. So, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, my ultimate. I'll leave it with this, and then I'll go. My ultimate dream in this life is I want to die on the moon. I want to die on the moon. That's my goal. All right, that's that is my goal achievement for this life. I want to die on the moon with the Earth in my eyes, and I will feel like my life was an accomplishment. So I'll leave it at that. I'll be back tomorrow for the Sunday session. You all have a great afternoon, and I'll see you soon.